Hi everyone and welcome to County Sligo Golf Club, where this morning we are joined by our heritage group here at our club, and we're going to get straight into it because we have a great story to tell. So Tony, first question to you, where did it all start?
Well, it all started on Bowmore Head, which is between the first and second beach at Ross's Point. There was three artillery regiments used to use that area for practice, and there was 8 cannons sitting on top of the hill, and someone said that the only thing they fired at was the sea, and that was something they could never win. But one of those regiments was the Sligo Artillery, and one of the commanding officers there was Colonel James Campbell, or Lieutenant Colonel James Campbell, and they started playing golf. We have no records of it, but they seemingly had 6 holes on the area that was a common ground, and they had 6 holes there. But then James Campbell decided to start a golf club, and he got together 2 other businessmen in Sligo, Arthur Jackson and his nephew Campbell Perry, and they decided to have a golf club here. And in 1894 in Sligo Courthouse, they got a meeting together and they decided to form the golf club. And the golf club was to be known as the County Sligo Golf Club. And that was the start. Now, the 3 men in connection were not great golfers themselves. They developed quite a lot from that area time. They got George Coombe, who was the secretary of the Golfing Union of Ireland at the time. He was from Royal County Down, to design the 9 holes. And he designed 9 holes on the upper plateau here. There's 2 plateaus, lower plateau and the upper plateau. He designed 9 holes on that plateau. And within 2 months after they started the club, they had nearly 100 male members and 30 lady members. And George Coombe, because of his connection with the club at the time, gave a cup called the Coombe Cup. And the Coombe Cup is still played to this day.
One of the things that you'd mentioned to us before was the space and the land of where all that kind of started, the very start.
The land actually at the time, I'm glad you mentioned that because I had forgotten about it, because they leased the land from the local landlord. The land in the area actually was owned by the Middleton family in Collooney. And William Middleton, he died about the late 1900s, and he left this area, the land in this area, to 2 of his sons. One died subsequently, and the other son, Henry, he lived in Elsinore House down here, which was originally built by a smuggler called John Black. But he was eccentric, and the interesting thing that they were related to William Butler Yeats through marriage. And he got Henry Middleton to lease the land for 1 year. And after the original year, Henry Middleton decided, no, they weren't going to play golf anymore. And they had a little problem because his solicitor was William Fenton, who was always the solicitor for the golf club. But they came to an agreement that they could lease it for another 10 years on the condition that they made Henry Middleton an honorary member. But it was about 1910 before he was actually made an honorary member, Henry Middleton.
And I'm just going to cut in there again, Tony, right? But maybe, Jimmy, we might bring you in on at this moment here. The connection between, at the very start, going back to 1894, and as Tony mentioned even before that, with Sligo Town and the people who set it all up. Can you enlighten us a little bit and share some of the stories?
Yeah, Tony has just outlined very adequately, but the first meeting was held in the grand jury rooms in Sligo Courthouse, and it was convened by Colonel Campbell and with his 2 friends, Arthur Jackson and Harper Campbell Perry. There were, out of that meeting, the golf club was founded. Initially, there were 96 founding members. 35 of them were members of the local Masonic Lodge. The Masons came to Sligo in 1830, and by the first lodge had about 42 members by 1894. 35 of those subsequently became founder members of the golf club. So there was a huge influx to get the club up and running And that was all down to the three, what I would call basically heroes of the club, Campbell, Jackson and Perry.
Will you tell the story about the president and the 4 vice presidents?
Yes, Campbell, Colonel Campbell was the driving force, but he decided when he was setting up the club that he would have a president and 4 vice presidents. And he picked 5 of the wealthiest and most prominent businessmen in Sligo. The president was Colonel Cooper from Markree Castle. His son, Captain Cooper, was a vice president. Sir Jocelyn Gore Booth from Lissadell House was another vice president. Evelyn Ashley, who was an MP from Classy Bawn, was the 3rd vice president. And the 4th vice president was Owen Wynne from Hazelwood House. And between the 5 of them, they owned over 100,000 acres in County Sligo. They were also all very involved in various businesses. So right from the set 2, Colonel Campbell was determined to make sure this golf club was a success.
Yeah, and moving on from that, Anne, from the very get-go as well, ladies have had a huge part to play in our club.
Well, ladies were involved from the very beginning. Our most prominent golfer was Amy Ormsby, and she won the Irish Close in 1909, which means golf was being played enthusiastically here for her truly at that level. She married Arthur Vernon and went to the emigration to South Africa. She won South African championship 4 times, and the last time was in 34.
Kevin, if I can bring you in on this, let's go to the course and maybe let's go back to 1894 and what did the course look like back then, and maybe the first designers right up to today.
Well, as Tony just said earlier, there was originally 6 holes here, which we don't have a design or any history as to where they were played. But the first tee, there is one photograph of people playing from the first tee from in front of the club, the hotel down at the lower chipping green. Then Coombe was invited to design the course. He was General Secretary of the Golfing Union of Ireland, the first General Secretary, and his first tee would have started closer to where the entrance is to the car park. And as Tony said earlier, the 9 holes were all on the upper level. They didn't go down over the hill on the 5th. In 1907 then, William Campbell, who would have been a stepbrother of Colonel James, he was a legal man who had trained in Cambridge. He designed another 9 holes to add to Coombe's 9 holes, so we had 18 holes, and that extended out onto the lower plateau, out as far as the far headland. Then the big event then, of course, in course design here was in 1927 when Harry Colt was invited to visit and redesign the course, and he changed things completely. The course at that stage was clockwise. He changed it to an anti-clockwise. Although there's 2 remaining holes of the William Campbell design in the Harry Colt course, which we enjoy today.
So, Kevin, we have a series of letters from Harry Colt, and you have them there. Will you just enlighten us as to what they say?
Yeah, we were very fortunate to come across a series of letters from Harry Colt, communications between him and Major Benson, who was the General Secretary here at the time. And included in those letters is a handwritten letter from Harry Colt himself. Now, it's to do with fees, but still it's a handwritten. It's lovely to have it, and we intend to make that available to all our visitors to see when they come to join us here. So Harry Colt arrived here in June of 27. We don't know exactly how long he spent here, but he spent long enough to survey the land and come up with a design for the course. He completely rejigged the design, and 16 of the 18 holes are his, and the two of the Campbell holes he held on to. Very interestingly, Colt and Campbell were in Cambridge around about the same time. They would have both played golf in Cambridge. Colt himself was a very good golfer. He got to the final of the British Amateur. And William Campbell played for Ireland on one occasion as well. So there would have been a strong connection there.
And I think Colt was captain of Cambridge when he got his blue.
So, Tony, back to you. So that's the main course, the championship course, as we know it. But we also have another 9-hole course, Bowmore course. But can we go back to before that? Can we go back many years ago? That was a race course, I believe.
That was a race course, yeah. Race course actually ran from what we call just below the hill at Bowmore out onto the beach, right over, and came back in round the 8th hole and back in again underneath the hill. The last race meeting they had here was in 1952, and it was only on the Bowmore level. At that stage, the golf course had put an electric fence round that particular area.
And was it a race course before the golf course? When did the race course start?
The race course started way back in the 1700s.
Oh, right. Okay.
1781.
But King did a lot of research on it, but the race courses go back years, it is. And I think the reason that they liked the race course was the type of ground that's there, and also the fact that they had the hill, and it acted as a stand where people could see all the races from the hill because of it.
That would be from our 5th as you
look.
From
the 5th, yeah, as you look down, yeah.
Okay.
And that was one of the reasons for that. And
Tony, was there ever any problems when the golf course was been talked about and then built from the racecourse committee, or did they work hand in hand, or was it the same people, as Jimmy might have mentioned?
It was mainly the same people.
Okay.
And I never heard of any friction at the time between the racecourse people and the golf club. The golf club had their own area there. There was problems with Bowmore back in the early days because that was common ground, and the golf club had to put an electric fence around it because there was cattle in there coming in and coming down to the golf course.
And Jimmy, it was also an airport.
It was an airport with Mr. Murray of Hanley Murray. Coming back to the race course, the very first meeting in 1781, it was a 3-day meeting, and people came out and spent a lot of money gambling at it, and the total prize money for the 3 days was 200 guineas, which was a lot of money in those days. About 1840, they moved the race course from Bowmore to Hazelwood, which is part of the Winland over at Hazelwood House. But they did come back in about 12 years before the golf club was founded, for about 14 years. So there would have been a very small period when the golf club was founded and the race course was still in existence in Bowmore. But the golf club at that stage was the Coombe golf course, or the Campbell one, and it was all above ground rather than down below.
Over the years, and we've had many notable golfers who have come and played here at County Sligo Golf Club. And maybe this is to all of you, really, to maybe name out some of the names that maybe people might say, oh, well, if it's good enough for them, then it's good enough for me. And Amy Ormsby, you mentioned, one of the foremost lady golfers ever, but your father, and who we will talk about a little bit later, your father, of course, being Cecil Ewing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but other notable golfers from around the world have played here over the years.
We've had lots. You probably remember more than I do. One I remember it was Frank Stranahan and Henry Cotton played an exhibition with Joe Carr and Dad, and it was well attended. But other people came as visitors and enjoyed the course. Probably, but you not more can think of more of them.
Fair idea.
Tom Watson and Byron Nelson came and played together. But going way back, Walter Hagan, Gene Saracen, they played, and Nick Faldo has played here lots of times. He's an honorary member here. He's been here lots of times.
Of course, Peter Alice has been mentioned as well. Bernard Langer.
Ormond Von Eyde, Bobby Locke played here, and Peter Alice, of course, and they came back in about the late 1940s. They were here, Bobby Locke, well known, so it was, and he was the one was involved with the famous situation with Harry Bradshaw and the ball in the bottle. That goes back a long time.
There's also a lovely association here at County Sligo Golf Club with the Yates family. Jimmy, William Butler Yates, that obviously world-renowned poet, and his brother Jack B. Yates, who's the again world-renowned artist, a very talented family. They would have spent time over here, and possibly Yates may have got some of his inspiration for some of his poetry.
Well, Yates was renowned for his love of Sligo, and in fact spent a lot of time here in Ross's Point with his brother, because they were related to the Middletons, and the Pollexfins, all of which were Ross's Point families. There is probably another connection that Yeats was, I think, in love with Constance Markovich, or Constance Gore Booth, and one of the senior vice presidents was Sir Jocelyn Gore Booth. So Yeats probably visited Lesterdale House a lot of times and may well have come over to the Point itself to walk the course.
Are you the set of clubs from the Gore Booths that you brought today?
There is a set of clubs here which Dr. Des Morn has. He purchased them on the breakup of the Lesterdale House. And one of the clubs, they're all hickory shaft. One of them is marked with Gore Booth, which I think was the essence of posh in 1894 or whatever, with his own name on it. And then there was a Mashie Niblick. They're actually not marked as to what the actual.
Yeah. They all had names. There was a driver. Then there was a number 2 wood was a brassy. The 3 wood was a spoon. There was a mid iron. There was a cleek. There was a jigger, and I forget the other one.
Long iron.
Yeah.
And there's no grooves for spin, for flat.
This actual club is marked a Mashie, but I think they're a great connection with Ross's Point Golf Club and Gore Booths, and by extension with the Yeats family.
Yeah.
Actually, Kevin, you when you were captain of the centenary year, you played a few holes with hickory sticks. What was that like in comparison to the modern clubs of today?
Yeah, well, obviously the ball doesn't travel as far, but we did locate one of the original tees. Well, Pádraig Keane found it up on the hill on the right of the 17th, as we know it today, and that was a hole played across that valley to where our 4th green is, and the hole was known as Satan. The hill that the tee is on is called Peter's Hill, and I think all those names came from the Connacht Rangers' involvement with the Boer War, and these are names that reflect their involvement down there.
Tony, while I have you there, will you just tell us a little bit about the clubhouse, which is spectacular? It really is it's a really iconic old building, and it's very impressive as you drive up the prom here in Ross's Point, and then you see this building. Can you just give a brief history of the building?
It certainly is, because they used to use Ewing's Hotel across the road there as a clubhouse from the early days. Actually, from almost the start, the hotel was used, and then they decided to build a clubhouse here. It was designed by George O'Connor, and it was designed in 1911, and it was built by James Kiernan in 1912. But it was a unique building for the time that was in it, and it was like one of the old colonial type buildings. We've been fortunate that we've been able to keep it.
That's interesting, because we're right on the Atlantic.
That's right.
We get some of the roughest weather here at times, typical links weather, and the fact that we have so much of the original building still standing, that's very impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very impressive, very impressive.
And also some of the stained glass that we have
That's
there
right.
goes back to the start.
There, yeah.
And Jimmy, you had mentioned yesterday about the shell.
Well, there's a design right on the very top of the building, which, if you look at it quickly, looks a little bit like a shell. It may or may not be. But Sligo in Irish means Sligoch, which is the shelly ground. And that's because going back for 3,000-4,000 years, shells were found all along the river and up towards Moharaboy. The other thing about the clubhouse, and I'm sure Anne and Tony might remember, is that there were 2 entrances, one for men and one for women. And in the middle, this room just next door to us here, was the lounge. And on the lounge door, there was a sign, no dogs or children under 12. So in their estimation at that time, dogs ranked higher than children under 12.
But speaking of which, Tony, you had shared a story with us there recently. The manager of the place here lived on the premises. That's right. And you have a story of our friends from America, a visitor who wanted to pay his fee.
Oh, that's right. A very, very good story with Dominic Rooney. Dominic was a great character and a very, very funny guy. And I always think that particular story, that one morning Dominic, 8:15 in the morning, got a knock on the window of the premise at the back of the club. And it was an American. Hey, Gary, he says, can I pay a green fee? And Dominic says, well, you can pay to me when you come in. He says, I am in. So
the club been founded in 1894. It really has given an awful lot to the area. And there's an awful lot that we should be proud of what we've achieved so far. both members and teams and so on and so forth. But is there any one thing in particular that you feel that we should be most proud of?
Well, I think it's the West of Ireland, which the members here created and started in 1923. It's the second of the provincial championships. The South was played earlier, it was started in the 1890s. The first playing of the West was in August of 1923. Arthur Jackson Jr. was the main man here. He really got the ball rolling. Initially, the competitors came from around the county of Sligo, maybe North Roscommon and Dublin. But over the years, it progressed into what we have today. Up to the early 60s, it was a match play event. It was straight match play, apart from maybe the first 2 years. And it was dominated by three players in those years. They were Anne's dad, Cecil. He played in 38 West of Ireland's in a row, which will never be.
And we will speak a little bit more about Cecil in just a moment, but there's a number of others as well that did dominate.
There are, yeah. Joe Carr, now Cecil won 10 Wests. Joe Carr amazingly played in 12 finals and won all 12, which is an incredible achievement. Best golfers in the world at the time. And then the other part, the other third person dominating those days was John Burke. Now John Burke was from Lahinch. He won 12 plus Souths, but not many people remember that he actually won 6 Wests, which was fantastic. Ulster players started to arrive on the scene in the late 50s, and they really dominated the West for a number of years. Probably the most successful was Garth and Jimsey.
Yeah.
And then we moved on up until 1994 when Pádraig Harrington came and won his first senior championship here when he won the West in 1994. As it turns out, Rory McIlroy came 11 years later and won his first senior championship here in 2005.
As a 15-year-old boy.
15-year-old, yeah. Shane Lowry, 2008, won his first senior championship here. And as it turns out, Paul McGinley won the Irish Close Championship here in 1989. That was his first senior championship success. So the West is traditionally held at Easter. It's the start of the amateur season. There's a great buzz around here when it's on. And we've produced 8 major titles from the West, which is none of the other championships have produced the winners we've done. One
of the winners there, Cecil Ewing, and I'm not going to ask you to do this, but I am going to ask Kevin. Kevin, the roll of honour of Cecil Ewing is very impressive. Can you share that with us?
So Cecil, who's pictured up here behind us, he played in his first West of Ireland when he was 14. He won the West in 1930. As I said, he won it 10 times. He played 38 times in a row, which was an incredible feat. He went on to play 96 matches for Ireland, played in 6 Walker Cups. He went on to be a great administrator, was president of the Golfing Union of Ireland, captained the Irish team to multiple successes, including European Team Championships, was a Walker Cup selector. And I think his greatest achievement was in the 1938 Walker Cup. He had just been beaten in the final of the British Amateur in Troon by Charlie Yates, which in itself was a magnificent achievement. Then he went to St Andrews, and he was part of the first winning team, the first Great Britain and Ireland winning team.
He held the putt on
the 18th, yeah.
Again.
They said there was about 10,000 people around the green. He held about a 4-footer on 18 to win. Having been brought, he was ahead, and he was brought back to all square with 2 to go, and he won the road hole with a solid par 4. And I think that stood out for me as his greatest achievement.
Another very impressive achievement. Before we come to you, Anne, Jimmy, the Ewing family has quite a distinctive roll of honour here, along with another family.
Cecil Ewing's father was a founder member of the club, very good golfer. And then there was obviously Cecil and brothers, and Anne, a very good golfer and a former president of the Ladies Golfing Union of Ireland, and Anne's daughter, Caroline, is a member now. So there's been a full continuity from the very beginning of the golf club. And I think the same applies to the Howley family, who, and it's most unusual, but it's a tremendous achievement to both.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear that. It's like, and it is genuinely an honour for all of us to have you here, but that must make you very proud to listen to all that.
Oh, it does. It does. He put a lot of work into golf, made great friendships and lots of fun. They were great four balls on the club on the weekdays, and the stories were great after the four balls.
Well, so we've heard of the achievements, but we'd like to hear more about the man himself, the dad, the person. And could I ask you maybe to share the story of the telegram, which we actually have, but the telegram is a lovely story.
Well, Dad was living in the hotel because his dad and Mum ran it, and he was working in Ballina. And his dad told me he was in the bar. We got a bit busier than usual. A few hands drifted in, and a few more. And eventually somebody said, any news? And his dad said, no. And another one, maybe a pint later, somebody said, any news about Cecil on the World Cup team? No, but there's a telegram up there, he said. So his dad rang Dad in Ballina, and he'd open it, invite to play World Cup. So Dad couldn't believe it. So there was a bit of a party in the bar, but he came back from Ballina to actually hold the telegram.
That was the first invitation to the World Cup, and then I think there was a story where he played. It was at Pinehurst possibly, and he got the boat back, and it was
Well, it was 1949, and they've gone for a while because it took a week to get there and another week to get back, and I suppose they had to climb it. I think he was gone for a month, and Mum and Tom and I were in a cottage here for the month, and they used to write to one another because anyway, and I have some of the letters. Anyway, he wrote to Mum and said, "You won't recognise me," he said. "I'm as thin as Car." You know, that, if you knew them, there was a lot to be done. Anyway, Mum went down to Cork to meet them coming back, and she said, "I don't see any difference." He put on all the weight he'd lost with the heat and playing golf. He put it all on the way back. And in fact, Henry Longhurst wrote, was the correspondent. He wrote, he said, when they were going out, he said it was noticeable that only Cara and Ewing could finish their meals because the others still on rations to a large extent. Anyway, he was the same man when he came back.
We spoke earlier, and with your brother Tom as well, and the respect that your dad had for John Burke from Lahinch, and I know that you met John Burke, and that your dad drove Tom to Lahinch so he just to meet him, and then drove home again. That was the respect that he had for him. But the Ewing Carr finals were famous at the time, and there was one particular final, and that maybe lunch might have been a reason.
When the West was on, Joe used to stay with us, and we always had great fun. But this time we were staying with Joe and Dora because Dad was playing in Portmarnock in the Close. And we had a great week. I went every day myself, but they played Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And Friday was the final, and it was 36-hole final. But we went back to Cars for lunch, which we did every day. And it was Friday, and Una had a steak for Dad, and everybody else had fish. Dad was 2 down at lunchtime, and he won on the 17th, the afternoon, on the second day, 18 holes.
But there was also great confusion, in particular for the postman, because your dad was Cecil, and your mum was Cecile,
yeah.
And there was always great confusion.
Well, little Cecil and big Cecil. That's what Joe and Dora always called it.
But your mum was a proficient golfer in her own right.
She was, but as she told Tom that she gave it up when they got married. There was only room for one golfer in the house.
And what was nice as well is that as time went on in his later years, and your mum had become a little unwell, he really stopped everything and minded your mum.
Oh, he did. He was great. It was very tough on them, Dan, because she used to go with him sometimes. It was expensive, but she didn't. Sometimes she'd go with him, but then naturally it wasn't possible, and he kind of cut down what he was doing.
And of all the achievements, whether it's, you know, captaining the Irish team, and I think it was Turin, where he was thrown into a pool, I believe.
Yeah, it was a 6-man team, and they had won it previously in England, and I might have got it the wrong way around. Anyway, it looked like they were going to win, and they were coming up the 18th, and he got wind of the fact that they were going to throw him into the swimming pool. And he gave somebody his watch, but they did throw him in.
So of all of the achievements, you know, is there any one thing that stands out for you that you're most proud of?
Well, that time in 1951, I was young, and I followed in Portmarnock. I followed every step of the way, and I left drops of blood on the course, really. One of the matches he played against John Glover, and it went to the 8th tie hole, and the light was nearly gone. John was the boy champion at the time. But I remember that particularly. Another thing, Uncle Harry and Carlo set up a scratch cup, the Governing Scratch Cup, as Dad says, so the brother could win it. He said, I never won a 72-hole scratch cup in my life. But we went every year when I was in boarding school, and I got out for the weekend. And he did win it in 57. that was great.
Just to go way back, well, sorry, not too far back, apologies, but to go back. So if we look at, you know, at the front of the clubhouse here is the putting green. That's always kind of been the putting greens for a long time. And then your family then had the hotel right beside it. And then your dad was out golfing. And you as a young girl, you told a lovely story of waiting for your dad and being able to hop across the fence. And
yeah, well, I think they were kicked, the 3 boys were kicked out to play golf, get them out of the way of the hotel. But, you know, they had great fun, really. It was a disease, wasn't it?
It was. It is.
one of the facilities that we had many years ago for the caddies was that they had their own course, Tony. Can you share that story?
Yeah, they had their own course because most of the caddies here had only bits and pieces of clubs and balls, so they started their own course. And the course actually that they played was part of the old original Coombe course. The first hole was, we used to hit from beside the watch house up here, just across the far side of the practice ground. And then the second hole was down where the toilets and that are on the caravan park. And the third hole then come down, what there used to be a big rock there. And there was a football pitch down from that. And they used to play down there and then back up again. And funny enough, the 6th hole there was actually the original 3rd, where they played across the valley over to where the beechery building is on the far side. And then we played up onto the top of the hill there, on Peter's Hill. And then the last hole was played up again, up to the front of the watch house. Now, they weren't proper greens. They were just a little ring like that you cut around it and a hole in the middle of it. And that was all. And the caddies decided, well, Johnny McGonigal, the pro was here at the time, was very good. He used to organise a lot of it as far as he could, and he would decide on the handicaps, etc. But nearly all the golfers that were here at the time, the young lads who played, we all played.
Tony, the social side of the golf club has always been very, very strong, and many as a story has been told upstairs that possibly we can't tell on camera. However, tell us the background to the County Sligo Golf Club male voice choir.
Well, one Sunday morning here, after coming in playing golf, the Dublin Busman's Choir arrived here. They had been at Mass in the church here singing, and they arrived into the golf club here. And myself and Don Gillen were sitting at the table, and somebody asked the choir, would they sing? And when they had finished, Don turned to me, he says, we should have a male voice choir in this. I'm going to do something about it. So that afternoon, he rang Robert's mother-in-law, Sheila Crowley.
Spoiler alert.
And to see would she be interested in. She says, no, I wouldn't. But an hour later, she rang him back and she said, Don, you talking about a male voice choir? Yes, he says, it's a male voice choir. Well, he says, she said, if you can get me 24, she said, we'll start it. And 2 hours later, Don rang him back. He says, I have 28, he said. and that was the start of the male voice choir.
In
1993.
1993.
And it was started really for our centenary year the following year. And the first time the choir sang in the club was at the drive-in of the centenary year in 1993.
Yeah.
Now, the choir was a very good choir and we had great routines, but the two main achievements that we had was in 2001 when we won the male voice section at the North Wales Choral Festival in Landudno. But to top that, in 2008, we went back there and we not only won the male voice choir section, we also won the choir of the tournament.
Well, Tony, I can top that again. Because remember, it's a male voice choir. You think those are the two things that I can top that again because I joined the choir in 1994 for that centenary year. Now remember, it's a male voice choir, and I found a wife in the male voice choir. I actually got a wife out of the male voice choir because Sheila Crowley, who you mentioned, right, has a daughter called Niamh Crowley, and she was the accompanist. And it was full of men, and I got a wife out of it. So I think that tops any of your we sang, but the stories that we had, the stories we had
from it were fantastic. We've had some great times, and you remember in Scotland. So I think that's probably enough on that.
I think that is definitely enough on that because that's all the stories that we can tell about. Great fun. It's fair to say there's always been a connection, Tony, between the village and a strong connection between the village and the golf course here. But it wasn't always the case, and it was only in, well, you can tell us when locals were allowed to join, and the reason why, which is a really good story.
The reason why really was that it was mainly that caddies, all of the caddies came from the village, and the caddies were not allowed to become members. And one of the original members here, he was a very good golfer actually, was Gerard Doherty, and he was before PJ Conway and the others. Gerard unfortunately was drowned going over to the island one night in 1950, and he was a very, very good golfer. And we never, because he was so young, we never know how good he could have been. But quite a few of the lads here joined Strandhill Golf Club because they couldn't become members here. But in 1958, we had a very good golfer here, Dermot Gillen. And Dermot had been a caddy. He caddied for one of the members here for years, for George Soden. And he and Rex Bucks decided that it's time that the caddies got into the golf club. And they changed the ban. And the caddies came in. And what I remember about it is that the local school teacher here, Jim Neefsey, started on a recruitment campaign. And I was away at sea at the time. I spent years in the Merchant Navy. And I got a letter from Jim Neefsey telling me that I was now a member of the golf club. And then I came home and that I was to pay my fee. And that's how I joined. That was in 1963. And from then, all the locals began to move into the golf club. And there's quite a lot of them, as Annie mentioned to us one night here. They used to have a caddies match, and there's a list there at the caddies match. And you want to see some of the golfers that were playing there.
We have a picture of the original caddies as well, haven't we?
They have some. I have a picture someplace. I can't find it, but I must get it up the ball at the first tee. And it was actually, when the caddies match was a great thing here, because there was a great atmosphere here when this was played, because most of the lads didn't have golf clubs at the time, and they used to borrow them from members. The members used to give them the clubs and they go out and play. And there was a day here, there was a celebration after we came in, and we were invited into the bar, and the older lads had drinks, and the other lads then were, the younger lads like myself and that, were left outside. But it was a very enjoyable time, but it just drifted away then as the lads began to join the golf club.
And we set the Heritage Group up there a few years ago, and it's been a real labour of love. I know Pádraig Keane is not with us today, who very much was part of this, but it must be wonderful to meet with the whole Heritage Committee and think about bygone days and maybe to put down once and for all the history of the club. So today is a very important day.
It brings you right back and reflects all the commitment that people put into it, and the thought and the consideration and the quality of the course. It's we have a jewel, we have to look after it and pass it on.
Yeah, Kevin, founded in 1894, but like all good things, we keep reinventing ourselves. Is it fair to say that we're in a really good place now? We're going from strength to strength, and if somebody looking in here thought, why should I go and visit and play County Sligo Golf Club? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think we always had a jewel, as you said. It needs polishing every so often, and I think that's what's happening now with Mackenzie Ebert. We got fresh eyes here a couple of years ago, which when you see the changes happening now, you realise that's going to bear great fruit for us going forward. I think we're certainly the top course in Connacht, and we're at the top table in Ireland, I think. And it's I think the future is very bright.
Tony, it's fair to say that you would be the go-to person, whether you like it or not, Tony, with information. Tell us one thing that you're most proud about being a member of this club, or the history of it. Is there one thing that stands out for you?
The one thing that stands out for me is getting involved. Whilst when you get involved in the club, as I say, it's like anyone says, as soon as you put your head above the parapet, you're shot at. But if you can take it, it's well worthwhile, because you can sit back and say, I always remember when I was made captain, someone asked me what was I going to do, and I said, I'm going to do nothing. I've done it. I'd done a lot before that. And I would say that I wasn't the only one that could say the same thing. You had to try to achieve it in that year. You'd done a lot of work before that. And over the years, being a member, you'll make a lot of friends, a lot of people. I wouldn't say enemies, I wouldn't count it that way, but a lot of people would disagree with you, I put it there. But it, to me, is just to have been involved in a club of this calibre. That, to me, is the biggest thing of all.
Yeah, and on that, Jimmy, when you take a look back at the history, and you take a look back at the names, and we've mentioned quite a few of them, it's very gratifying to look back and say there is a serious history to this club that goes back right back to 1984, and will continue for the next whatever length of time, hopefully centuries from now. But it's a very important part of the northwest of Ireland.
Absolutely, and the connection between the club and the greater Sligo area is huge, and it works both ways. And nowadays the club is a great earner in tourism for the whole northwest, not just Sligo. But likewise, the area around Sligo have got great benefit from the club and the members. And I certainly think the future is very, very bright.
And an unfair question to ask, and I apologise, right? But is there one thing that stands out for you? Been a member here as long as you have been part of a dynasty of County Sligo Golf Club that continues for at least 2 more generations, with your daughter and son-in-law, both previous captains here, and then your grandchildren also here. Is there one thing that you're most proud of?
Well, this is strange. It's quite a recent event. I was so proud to be invited to the Champions Dinner, and so proud to see how many past winners turned up, and the atmosphere among them, and how delighted the players were to meet each other. It just proves that there's great friendships in golf and lots of fun.
Yeah, Kevin, just on that particular evening was one of the highlights last year, and it was a very, very special night. Was there any particular highlights on the evening that stood out for you?
Well, it was great. We had the champion from 1963, Michael Cragen, was 91 or 92 years of age. Vincent Nevin was up from Limerick. Des Smith was here, and Des spoke really well that night. It was lovely to see them all relaxed. These lads fought like dogs against each other on the course over the years. They were very competitive. Some of them not so pleasant on the golf course, but it was lovely. It was a fantastic evening.
There weren't really many missing. If you take out the people who have left us, there was nearly a full take-up of past champions.
Yeah, it is fair to say that we're very proud of the West of Ireland, that we do look after our past champions. Speaking of which, Kevin, would you share a story, if you don't mind, about a certain Mr. Rory McIlroy when he came here for the first time? and maybe give the background of what used to happen back then. There was a book, wasn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, Dominic Rooney, who was mentioned earlier, was the caretaker here. He used to look after the bar and the restaurant and lived in the back of the building. But he was an amateur bookie as well. He used to run a book on the West, and he had a colleague, Tom Gavin, who used to help out. Dominic had heard about Rory McIlroy, but Tom hadn't. And Dominic left the book in charge of Tom for about an hour one day.
And Rory McIlroy was what age at this stage?
15. And a man from the north who Tom didn't know came up to ask for odds on Rory McIlroy. Tom had never heard of him, gave him very high, ridiculous odds. And Jerry McIlroy made a substantial bet. Dominic's first question when he came back was to Tom, did you take any bets on that lad McIlroy? And Tom didn't know what he was talking about. But the damage was done. Anyway, Jerry got a substantial sum. But Dominic had no regrets. It's a story, it's well documented in some of the books that we've written since.
Well, that's possibly a nice way to sign off on today, and we'd like to thank very much our contributors to what I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did, and to what is a very, very special club and with a very special history. So I hope you enjoyed it, and for those of you who haven't played here, there's always a welcome for you, and a really good pint of Guinness too, by the way, and a nice glass of wine. So if you wish, come and join us. You can contact us on 07191 77 122 or on our email down below. So thank you again to everybody, and we're looking forward to the next 130 years.